Lieutenant, where are you?
Right back here.
Yeah, come share some stuff with us.
I'll just grab this chair right here. All right. I'm Dave Henry. I'm a night shift lieutenant for East Precinct. Thank you.
Yes.
And I was asked to come here by Lieutenant Walsh to kind of talk about what we're doing in service for this year. And I'm going to give you a real quick historical perspective of kind of what my involvement has been in, kind of with this process, so you guys have a little bit of understanding of where I'm coming from. I served for the last, well, not the last 2 years. I had about a 6-month break with the original racial profiling committee with Joanne and Deanna and Mike. So that's how I kind of got involved in this, with these discussions, which is ultimately what spurred this new movement here, the Human Rights Commission. And so I have a lot of insight from that. I've heard a lot from the community, and that influenced some instruction and conversations that we had within the Bureau. And so one of the things that we did last year was we did a in-service class that kind of kicked off the racial profiling plan that Chief Sizer had drafted. And our job was basically to bring that out and introduce it to the officers in a way that they're going to hear it. And I think it's really important for people who are not involved in the police community to understand there is a way you say things so that police will hear it, specifically when it comes to areas of race and race relations. That class provided an opportunity to ask very hard questions, and because we had good trainers, Deanna helped, and Tony Pazador, who speak with authority, we were able to talk about some subjects that are difficult within the police bureau. And those subjects involving race, and more importantly, the perception of people of color in their communities, how they view us and how we police. That was a difficult subject to broach, and I'm telling you something, we had, in my opinion, great success. I had a lot of people come up to me after the class and say, hey, that's a tough subject. We appreciate you bringing it up and putting it in a level that we can all talk about it. Because there's hurts on both sides of this. There's hurts both within the police community, feeling we're always vilified no matter what happens, if it's a person of color, specifically in a shooting or a race-related issue. Cops feel that pressure, and they feel like they're being micro-scrutinized and they can't do anything right. And so when you bring up the topics of race, it's hurtful on both sides. But once we bring it up and say, we're not making judgment, we're just talking, it opens up a discussion. So that was last year, but one of the things that we left with last year was a challenge, and there was a series of challenges, and one of those challenges was basically treating people better, explaining yourself better. And so when people get caught up in the numbers of the racial profiling, numbers, these numbers are this and this, kind of the end result from hearing hundreds and hundreds of people's feedback is that it's not about the numbers, it's how we treat people. It's not about the numbers, it's how we treat people. Because the numbers are just a mathematical way of looking at something, but what's more importantly is the hurts that we leave on people and vice versa. And so that was the challenge. So this is what we're going to be doing, we're going to talk about, we're going to have open discussions about this, but the big part was we serve a community and the community serves us. Okay, we work together in this partnership. It's not a one-sided relationship on either side. And there's people on both sides who want to say it is, but unless we're both doing it together, we're not successful. That's how last year's in-service left off, and I think that was a good start. Part of the racial history that we talked about was introduced a little bit in that class. When we talked, I asked the question, how many of you know what the possum incident is? A lot of our officers didn't. And I said, what about don't choke and smoke them? Anyone remember these? No. And when you ask them, the facts weren't accurate unless someone had been there and know what the true facts are. And so I don't know if that's part of this, the new training that we're going through, but I found genuine interest on the officers' part of kind of figuring out what the history is of folks that they're policing. It's incredibly important, both from just an understanding when people come at you with some pains and hurts, and you're saying, well, why are they treating this way? Well, you don't realize this is the family that was involved in this, and so yeah, they have some hurts about the police bureau. And as I said in my question, as a new officer, wouldn't you want to know that? Wouldn't you want to know if you're going to the house of a family member who had an officer-involved shooting when there was a death, and there's hurts there, wouldn't you like to know that information? Yes, you would, because you know that's going to be at the forefront. So with that discussion, the second part that we're kind of migrating into now is this thing called hit rates, and that's the technical term, the buzzword for how successful we are at doing searches when we contact people, vehicle stops or pedestrian stops. How successful are we at finding items of contraband, drugs, weapons? Those are really the things that we're looking for. And one of the problems that we've heard over and over, especially in communities of color, is that you're stopping a disproportionate amount of us, but you're not finding as many items of contraband as you are on the general population. So why are you stopping us more often? I mean, that's the question, right? And so one of the things that we're trying to get people to understand, and again, I've enlisted Tony's help, and he's really loving these career development pieces, is really talking about when we make a decision on who we're going to contact, why? Why are we going to contact that person? Let's have a rational basis of how we're getting there. When I came on, the training was mere conversation. You get out, you see someone walking down the street, and you just start asking if you can search them. And that's fine and dandy. We get a lot of stuff that way. We get a lot of items of contraband that we don't want on our streets. We get weapons and drugs taken off the street, and that's great, except we offended a whole lot of people. Because unless you have good discretion, until you learn that art of really the indicators of that person, you're searching the wrong people sometimes. And that lasting impression, specifically on people of color, is that this is once again another way that the police are targeting us. When in fact this officer is just a new officer who has no idea how to discern who's holding what and who's not. So this training that we're doing in this year's in-service is going to be focused on how are we going to improve those rates, how are we going to improve who we contact and searches, so that instead of searching 100 people and finding 2 items of contraband, we might search 20 and get 2. The biggest challenge will be to teach officers a skill that is more art than it is science. I can tell people that these are the indicators, which is part of their training. You know, these are things to look at, and you guys can see them too. I mean, I could teach you guys those. For instance, when the police are going down the street, someone looks at you and they immediately take a left-hand turn and they start walking to a new house. You know, 9 times out of 10, they don't live there. They're just trying to get out of your eyesight. Those are indicators that are going to draw us towards viewing people and making like, why am I going to contact this guy? But it's the art that is tough. The art part is the years of experience, and we're trying to figure out a way to teach that. We have got a good curriculum planned out on how we're going to do that for the time we have. There is a lot of interest in it, and there's a need for this. There's an absolute need for this. One of the premises of our class, kind of the foundation, is this, that if I'm not seeing indicators, if I'm not seeing indicators of illegal activity, then why am I bothering to ask to search? And I think if we can accomplish just that goal in this year's in-service, we're going to have huge success, and the community is going to reap the benefits of that, because they're going to understand that we are trying to be diligent on what we're doing. The second part of that is the follow-through with last year's in-services of this how we treat the community. Because we can search a lot of people, and if we talk to people and explain in a truthful way why exactly we're doing what we're doing, they may not like it. If I've offended somebody, if I stop this lady here and I say, hey, I need to check you out, is that okay? And we do that thing, it may offend her, but it really offends her if she gets no explanation of why I chose her. Versus me saying something, hey, it's this time of night, you're out in this area, this is the place the drugs are being kept, we're having a lot of shootings over in this area, or what have you, we're getting burglaries in this area. They may not like the answer, but at least there is an explanation. And kind of to finish up part of this training, everybody deserves an explanation. Everybody. Criminals, non-criminals, everybody gets an explanation of why we're doing our job. And again, that just goes back to the point that we serve a community, and that community serves us. And if we don't start explaining our actions more often, if we don't teach our officers how important, how critically important that is, then we lose community trust, and we can't afford that. So that's my presentation. Any questions about that?
Any questions, Lieutenant? Comments?
This is great to hear, and I applaud that you are talking about explaining the purpose of certain things, because all of us look for that. Even yourself, when you are not informed, somebody putting you in Vancouver, you deserve an explanation and respect about that.
Yes, sir.
So the community is asking for respect, asking for communication, and it hurts sometimes. That's when I'm picking up Oregonian, and they hear 3 students, one of them got fall to the ground. Not a gang member, is a female. That's what the community is looking at. So that is it profiling? What is that? So that's when, for me, when I was reading the newspaper last weekend, and I'm glad to hear one comment of one of our officers. I felt heartwarmed with that comment of that officer. But at the same time, I was asking why this is happening. So things like that is how we can get to that level that there isn't that misunderstanding like that, or assumption, or you know what I'm trying to say?
I do, and I think one of the things that successful officers